This is my land. Change here for some first generation eco discs. This is a Benno line train and it's lift tour time. This is my land hospital and now to the first lift, which is behind a locked door with an intercom. But I waited for someone to come out and just as the door was closing behind them, I stuck my foot in the way and managed to get in. And the lift is a really nice first generation eco disc. Let's ride it!
Third floor. Ground floor.
And now to the next lift, which is also a first generation eco disc, but this lift has 2 floors called floor 2. This is because on first generation eco discs, often they only put 1 letter or number on each button, meaning I couldn't fit 2 mezzanine onto a button, so both floors are called floor 2. Let's ride it!
Doors closing. Second floor rear. Doors opening. Going up. Doors closing. Second floor front. Doors opening. Going up. Doors closing. Third floor. Doors opening. Doors closing. Ground floor. Doors opening.
And now to the next lift, which is something I've never seen before. But before we go on to that, let's take a look back over the different generations of EcoDisc. First generation EcoDisc started in 1996, and back then these EcoDiscs were nothing like any lift ever invented in the past. They were so modern and totally awesome. It was like nothing the lift industry had ever seen before. First generation EcoDiscs could only go 1 metre a second. For fast lifts, Cone had their Office Series DC, which was very similar to their old M Series, but a sort of a slightly more modern version. Second generation EcoDisc started somewhere about 2002-2003. This could go 1 metre a second and was a really awesome lift, and these were built to about 2013. Third generation EcoDisc was their faster 2 metre a second model. Alternatively, it could just go 1.5 metres a second, but could then carry more weight. This was invented about 2004 and carried on to about 2014. In 2014, they then invented their 4th generation EcoDisc, which is really nice lift, but not that interesting because it's lost the awesome clunk. The classic thing about EcoDiscs is the clunk as it starts. They've lost that now. Anyway, you can easily tell the different EcoDiscs from what they sound like. So, first generation EcoDisc has a slightly different sort of older sounding clunk as it starts to the others. All of the different generation EcoDiscs are all variable frequency, 2000 Hz. They all make the same high pitched noise as the lift travels. But first generation EcoDisc makes a sort of low pitch, low resonance hum as it gets to the top speed. So it's a bit like this. Tip-pong. Second generation EcoDisc, the variable frequency starts just before brake releases, so you can just about hear the high pitched variable frequency just before the clunk. And second generation EcoDisc has the most awesome and loud sounding clunk of all of them, and also a very loud clunk as it stops. And the 2000 Hz variable frequency sound is very louder. Tee-tong, tee-tong. Third generation EcoDiscs makes 2 little clunks, then a big clunk as it starts off, and it sounds much more powerful and accelerates much faster. bleat. Fourth generation eco disc is rather boring because there's no clunk. And now, in the period around 2002, 2003, 2004, when Cone were changing from a first generation disc to their second generation eco disc, there was sometimes some mix and match models with some first generation and some second generation parts. Quite a few times I've seen lifts with the second generation eco disc cab and buttons, but with an older first generation eco disc motor and the older voice. And a couple of times I've seen some lifts with first generation eco disc fixtures, but with the newer second generation eco disc motor. But this is the first ever time I've seen a lift with the older first generation eco disc fixtures, but these are the standard first generation eco disc fixtures, which is actually the more posh version of the first generation eco disc fixtures, the ones they use in their more posh lifts. But this lift, despite having first generation fixtures, has not a first, not the second, but the third generation eco disc motor. Really, really weird. Never seen this before.
Second floor.
And now to another eco disc with first generation eco disc fixtures and the third generation eco disc motor.
Ground floor.
And now we got out of the old part of hospital and now into a bit newer, a bit sort of late 70s part of hospital. And on this passage between the two hospitals, this passage has late 80s or early 90s Crystal Palace architecture. I find this architecture interesting because on a lot of train stations in South East England, built in this period, when they actually used this architecture quite a lot, and suddenly went really out of fashion, and some of them have been sort of pulled down or a bit modernised. It's quite an unusual type of architecture. And now we go along into the late 70s part of the hospital, and the lifts here are some old Benny lifts which have been horribly modernised.
Doors closing. Floor 2. Doors opening, going down. Doors closing. Doors closing. Ground floor. Doors opening.
And now we go out of the hospital and around the back where there is an old dumb waiter. This lift looks really awesome, but it wasn't working. And now we go along into this really old Victorian part of the hospital. This used to be an old Victorian workhouse before it was converted into a hospital. I was hoping for a really nice old lift here, but sadly there wasn't. But the lift here is a cheap version of an Otis Gen 2.
Doors closing. Second floor. Doors opening. Going down. Doors closing. Ground floor. Doors opening.